The next thing we have to do is replace the nut. Since I'm having the, pairs of strings, the 6 doesn't exactly work out. So, this type of a nut, sort of, I guess, like a Gibson style nut, because Fender is usually in the actual fretboard, there's a slot cut in and just like a long rectangle of plastic bone, whatever, is set into that slot. This, the fretboard is cut at the end, and this is seated up against the end of the fretboard and sitting on the neck material, the maple of the neck. So usually, look at that, just pops right off. I was just going to say, usually it's just glued in with a little tiny bit of wood glue or, white glue, whatever, and you can pop it off, or sometimes you might have to take this and just lightly tap with a hammer for a screwdriver. But it popped right off. There's a little bit of plastic on the bottom that I'll clean up. So for the donor neck, I have that 12 string again. Okay, I was going to bring the 12 string in, but I picked it up and gave the nut a little bit of a push, and it pretty much came right off. It has some sort of like, sticky glue on it, almost like rubber cement or something, like weird, but whatever. So, it's a cheap plastic nut, but you know what? It'll work. Okay, and it's a 12 string, so as you can see, it's quite a bit wider. So what I'm going to do is cut the nut about here. So these are the thicker strings, the E, the A, the D, the G. I'm going to probably cut it right about here at the beginning of the pair for the B. Round it off a little bit, whatnot. Yeah, I'll probably do that. And just set it in there. Glue it in there so that it's slightly, centered. So once I've cut this piece off, it'll be like that. Not perfectly optimal, but you know what? That's life. Okay, and I'm sure it's going to have to be lowered a bit if I lined it up with this. Yeah, quite a bit. 1/8 of an inch or something. Okay, but it's doable. I can do it. I wonder. No, that doesn't really work. Okay, so I'll figure something out with this, but that's what we're going to do for the nut. So I'll be back. I sanded the bottom of the 12 string nut. It was way too tall. I kind of compared it to this, and it's still a little bit too tall, but it's, I'd rather string it up and kind of take it from there, height-wise, than go too short, and, these string slots I'm definitely going to have to widen, and, probably wouldn't hurt to sort of angle them a bit as I go. So, basically, I'm probably going to just be cutting all new string slots. So I didn't want to go too low and then have the string slots, now be too low and the nuts too short. And I also decided against cutting off the edges. I'm probably going to go with the middle 4 pairs, and if I cut them at the outer edge, the outer strings of the 2 E's, then it's right about the proper width. But I didn't want to do that either because I didn't know if I was going to take the 4 pairs and shift them a little to the thicker end of things, or a little to the, to the bass side of things on the neck, or more to the treble side of things on the neck, or leave them dead center. I wasn't totally sure. So I figured, you know what, I'd rather just put them on here, leave them in, leave the ends, and then trim after I'm done, see what I need to do trim wise. So this looks like it's a pretty good solid fit right in there. And what I did, the inside was hollow, so I put a thin piece of the pickguard material in there. So now it's a solid, thick, solid nut without the middle piece. I don't know if that's good, bad, indifferent, I don't know. But I figure if I cut the edges, I'm going to cut right into the, if I trim the sides, the ends of them, I'm going to cut into that space in the middle. And it was a big, it went pretty much, probably about that deep. And I don't know if you can see, it goes pretty much like almost to the very end. So if I did it, then I was afraid that the nut that I had with, the extra tension of 8 thicker strings on it, it's just going to be, like the nut's going to be like sort of a, a channel. And I didn't want it to deform and, crack or whatever. So I don't know if that's doing it or not. I think I'm pretty much a genius for figuring this out, but whatever. Then the other thing that I did, of course, doing it on a perfectly flat surface with a, piece of sandpaper. What I did was I took a, sorry, I ran out of storage on the memory card. So what I was saying, I thought this was a pretty smart idea. I took a, building brick. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name, but building brick. And when I got this down to about where I wanted it, I smoothed this side a little bit because, the plastic, it's like molded and it's not really perfectly smooth. It has a little bit of dips in it. So I smoothed that a little bit, and then I'm right-handed, so I do it the other way, but I'll try left-handed. So I pushed the side that's going to go against the fretboard that I just said I smoothed out. I put that, hold this down nice and tight, nice and, solid down. Push that up against it, and just, so I'm pushing this way more than pushing down, because if you just take this, like I was doing, just go, you're pushing it this way, so it grinds a little more, sands a little more off of this edge, then pulling it this way and sands a little more off of this edge, so you end up with not a perfectly flat bottom. But putting it on a flat surface like this, it doesn't rock whatsoever. So it is perfectly flat, and if not perfectly square, it's certainly more than square enough. So that's all I did, just doing this. Okay, and not pushing down too much, letting the sandpaper kind of do the work, because all I'm doing is just squaring it up. I'm not really worried about taking off any more, taking any more height off of it. So that's what I did with that, and I think that's pretty darn smart. So we are good to go. So that's pretty much just going to sit there for now. The strings will hold it in when I put them on and stuff. So I think the next step is to attach the neck to the body. So we will move on to that next.